Our next guest is an internationally published Serbian-American poet, novelist, and essayist. She's an author of 11 books and has a PhD in comparative literature from Princeton University. Her book is called Nikola Tesla, the Super Genius Who Gave Us Light. Please welcome Maya Herman Sekulic, please.
Hi, I'm Maya Herman, and as you can imagine, being a poet and a novelist, I couldn't even think of writing a book about a scientist. But then came invitation from the Tesla Science Foundation, where they were telling me that they intend this year to launch Tesla's curriculum in middle schools, and suddenly something clicked and I got inspired because I said, okay, this is something I can do well, and would be glad to do. So my intention with this book, which is still work in progress, is to introduce Tesla to the American schools, American kids, and in middle schools, but also to go beyond and reach adults who would like to know more about Tesla or don't know anything about Tesla. So for the scientific part of it, I also got the full support of Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade, because I wanted to base it on the facts, on no urban legends here, just the facts and the latest scientific facts. But it also is intended to be a very kind of a good read. So I will read you excerpts from the book, which is called Who Was Nikola Tesla? The Genius Who Gave Us Light. And I thought about this title a lot and decided for the simplest of all, who was Nikola Tesla? Because he is an enigma. And let's try to decipher this enigma now. Okay, so I will start in medias res in the middle of the first chapter, which is called A Dreamer with an Iron Will. Tesla's mother knew by heart thousands and thousands of verses from Serbian epic poetry, which she recited daily to her son, who was often ill. He enjoyed the stories of medieval Serbian kings and heroes, of their bravery and chivalry. Thus, early on, listening to those poems of heroic adventures, he developed a rich imagination that would later enable him to completely visualize complex inventions, some of which have not been realized even to this day. It also helped him to develop a strong will to overcome the many illnesses he suffered as a child. Early on, he became a dreamer. Originally, he wanted to be a poet, as the story goes, but after getting zapped by static electricity from his cat while he was striking her back, he became interested in the phenomenon of electricity. By listening to his mother reciting epic poems, young Nikola also developed an unyielding memory that would enable him to memorize entire books and speak 6 languages fluently by the time he turned 18. By the end of his life, he would speak fluently 8 and had studied a dozen languages. Just imagine that. Following his dreams, Tesla also attempted to fly from his barn with an umbrella. Change the slide. He failed and failed, but never gave up. All his life, he kept trying to solve the problem of flying until he invented a flying machine. Nothing like that. How poetic it is to think of his cat as responsible for the second industrial revolution. How motivational is to think of how Tesla never gave up. How inspirational is to think of how Tesla overcame many illnesses, including cholera, as a child. Yep, something to think about. Okay, so we move on, and I will read a bit from chapter 3, which is called America, Here I Come. In June of 1884, Nikola Tesla sailed to America, arriving in New York with 4 cents in his pocket, a few of his poems, and some calculations for a flying machine. He did not see the Statue of Liberty because it was constructed 2 years later. He decided to come to New York because he realized that in Europe there was not enough opportunity for his revolutionary discoveries. Upon his arrival, young engineer Nikola Tesla went to the great American inventor Thomas Edison with a piece of paper on which Edison's representative in Europe, Charles Batchel, had written the following recommendation, quote, "I know 2 great men. You are one, and the second is the young man that stands before you." Unfortunately, the 2 great inventors were too far apart to work together for long. It was Nikola Tesla who developed technology that can provide the power of electricity for our households and our factories, and thus it was Tesla who moved mankind 1 giant step forward in our evolution. Tesla, not Edison, was the genius who gave us light. If it were for Edison, however great his inventions, we would still be sitting in darkness. Okay, and now towards the end, I talk about Tesla, the man. This is from the chapter 14, Tesla, the man. Almost supernaturally gifted, tall, thin, elegant, proud, flamboyant, and eccentric, Tesla was fond of theatrical and extravagant experimentations, and he became a superstar of the Gilded Age. He was a dapper dresser and believed in a dress for success philosophy. He was also obsessive compulsive. He rarely slept. He feared pearls. I love pearls. He hated anything that wasn't divisible by 3. He liked to go to New York parks and feed the birds. He famously loved a white dove. He declared, quote, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." End quote. The white dove became a symbol of Tesla and of peace around the world. He had a great sense of humor, as proven by his verbal exchanges with Rudyard Kipling and the greatest humorist of all of them, his friend Mark Twain. Tesla also enjoyed pranks. And quote, "He shook the poop out of Twain," end quote. By placing him on the platform in his New York lab and then flipping high-frequency oscillator while knowing all too well that Twain had digestive problems. After only 90 seconds, Twain ran for the facilities as fast as he could. Tesla was also a great environmentalist. He was green long before it was fashionable. He was a vegetarian, even a vegan, again, long before it was fashionable. He was friends with John Muir, founder of the Sierra Club, who loved Tesla's clean energy system. He was quite impractical, as we all know, in financial matters, and yet he made a lot of money. And if it were not for his unprecedented generosity, especially to Westinghouse, he could have been the very first billionaire scientist ever. In those days, very rich people were usually millionaires, not billionaires. Tesla did not care much about money. He did not have time for material success. He had more important things to think about and care about. He had to invent a brave new world. He had to become a poet of science. Tesla was a great humanist who did everything for the good of mankind, and yet he did not allow himself many close friends or any intimate relationships with women, although many admired him. He was, as far as we know, a celibate his entire life. There is a very touching story related to his friendship with one of the greatest Serbian romantic poets, Laza Kostić, who, according to their correspondence, wanted at any cost to see Tesla married and proposed that he marry his own greatest love, a beautiful heiress, Lenka Dunjerski. The poet felt that he was too old for her, although she loved him back. And out of fear or generosity, he insisted that she marry Tesla as the better choice. The marriage did not happen, but out of this strange triangle, a poem, Santa Maria della Salute, one of the most beautiful in Serbian poetry, was born. Tesla was also a popular man about town, admired by important men, adored by scores of society beauties who were intrigued by the gaze of his gray eyes. He was living in the lap of luxury at the height of the gay 90s in a Waldorf Astoria suite, and counted among his close friends such luminaries as the above-mentioned Mark Twain and Rudyard Kipling, two of the richest men in the world. John Jacob Astor and J. Pierpont Morgan, who both funded his research, and Stanford White, designer of the original Madison Square Garden, which at the time, in 1890s, was the tallest and the most beautiful building in New York City. He happily became Tesla's architect. Imagine, the greatest architect of the time. The designer of Wardenclyffe Tower. Among his admirers, he counted 3 presidents. Ignaz Paderewski, the greatest pianist of the time and later Prime Minister of Poland, 2 US presidents, Teddy Roosevelt and his cousin Franklin, and of course colleagues such as Westinghouse, who backed Tesla, and famed competitors such as Marconi and Edison. Yes, Thomas Edison. It is hard to believe that they were not sworn enemies. Not all the time. More of the Steve Jobs, Bill Gates rivals of their time. Although Edison tried to destroy his rival, he also helped Tesla at first, and later in 1917, Tesla graciously accepted the Edison Medal as the highest honor for his work ever given to him. He even called Edison on that occasion that wonderful man. Finally, the last chapter, which is called The True Father of the 21st Century. Nikola Tesla died on January 7, 1943, in Hotel New Yorker, where we stand now in New York City in room 3327 on the 33rd floor. You can guess 3 was his favorite number. He had been an American citizen for over half a century and a very famous one at that. He was also a true New Yorker. To commemorate his connection to the Big Apple, the intersection of 40th and 6th Avenue in Manhattan is named Nikola Tesla. But after Tesla's death, the custodian of alien property shamelessly impounded his trunks as if he were an illegal and an unknown alien. They held thousands of papers, his diplomas, letters, and his notes. Most of them vanished or are classified up to this date. What was left was eventually inherited by Tesla's nephew, Yugoslav diplomat in the US, Dr. Sava Kosanovic, and later housed in the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade, where it is kept to this day. 2,000 people swarmed into New York City Cathedral of St. John the Divine for his funeral services, and a flood of messages acknowledged the loss of a truly great genius. New York Mayor LaGuardia read the text written by Louis Adamic, a famous Yugoslav American journalist, and gave an outstanding tribute to Tesla, calling him a poet of science. 3 Nobel Prize recipients addressed their tribute to, quote, one of the outstanding intellects of the world who paved the way for many of the technological developments of modern times, end quote. After a long period of neglect, Tesla is finally regarded as one of the greatest minds ever born. He's called now the god of lightning, the man who invented the 20th century. 21st century geniuses, such as the founders of Google or the inventor Elon Musk, find Tesla more inspiring than any other scientist from the past. The latter named his company and his popular electric car after Tesla. Tesla makes more sense now than ever before. He was so far ahead of his time that many of his ideas are only coming into reality today. But more than this, Tesla's life inspires us to believe in our dreams and shows us how our dreams can be accomplished against all odds. Thank you. Can you keep this for a moment? Okay, you've seen some images here of Tesla. First ones with the cat and so on were drawn by a young artist from Belgrade, Dragana Nikolic, who was recently awarded at the Belgrade Book Fair for the best designed book. And this is her proposal for the cover of my book, Who Was Nikola Tesla? The second one is also young artists from Belgrade. It's a studio Ringelspiel headed by Branislav Brkic, and this is from their trailer for the Tesla, the lamplighter. They propose this as possible illustrations. The style is here for the book. And finally, we have acrylic on canvas from 2011 by Anton Peric, who is here, an artist from, originally from Dubrovnik, but certainly a real New Yorker, a photographer. He's really a chronicler of New York life, art life, and he did it in his famous magazine, The Night. And this is, I would say, the most spiritual portrait of Tesla. This was done because, among other things, Anton Peric is also an inventor, and he belongs here for sure. This is done by the painting machine, and this painting machine, which was invented in the 70s, was envy of Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol envied this machine, and Anton had recently had a very successful comeback in a very distinguished gallery downtown. So I'm very happy to present this portrait to you. And I would like you to tell me, maybe by raising your hand or whatever, which of these styles would be good for cover of my book. Any? Okay, let's go here.
That one is mine.
Okay. This one? And third one? Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. So that's it. Thank you so much.